William Scott Scurlock, often known as the Hollywood Bandit or Hollywood, was an American criminal who stole banks in the Seattle region throughout the 1990s, using Hollywood-quality makeup and disguises. 1970s and 1980s, William Scott Scurlock was born in Maryland and raised in Fairfax County, Virginia, as the son of a minister. In 1974, Scurlock relocated to Hawaii and reunited with his friend Kevin Myers, who attended the University of Hawaii on a pole vault scholarship. After Myers' scholarship ended, the two friends relocated to the North Shore of Oahu, where they resided on a 5-acre tomato farm. They worked 4 days a week in Honolulu for a firm called Hawaii Plant Life and Privacy Fences, and the rest of their time was spent on the North Shore. In 1976, while hiking, Scurlock and Myers came across a tiny marijuana farm. They later returned and stole some marijuana plants, which Scurlock then sold. Although he had no intention of becoming engaged in the drug trade, Scurlock enjoyed keeping his own marijuana plants hidden on the tomato farm. When the farm's owner found out, Scurlock was forced out of the property, and Myers went to Banff National Park in Canada shortly after. Scurlock departed Hawaii and relocated to Olympia, Washington. In 1978, Scurlock enrolled at Evergreen State College with the goal of becoming a doctor. He excelled in college, particularly in chemistry classes. As a result, Scurlock started sneaking into the school's chemistry lab at nighttime through the ceilings to produce methamphetamine, which he packaged and then sold. With the money he got from dealing, he was able to purchase 20 acres of land near Olympia, which included a tiny house. He employed the house for producing methamphetamine and constructed a 3-story treehouse on the site. Scurlock was popular among the people he knew, whom he referred to as his tribe, and they would do practically anything for him. For help with his treehouse in Washington, Scurlock recruited Kevin's brother, successful sculptor Steve Myers, who was going through a difficult divorce. Scurlock traveled extensively, had plenty of women, and enjoyed the best restaurants and champagne. Once a professor discovered that Scurlock had been using lab equipment to produce meth, he got kicked out of the school. He was 1 credit away from graduation. Scurlock's meth business came to an end in 1989 when his major distributor was murdered. Bank robbery. According to Steve Myers, Scurlock informed him that as a kid he dreamed of robbing banks with a Robin Hood attitude, which is similar to reappropriating money. With this strategy, Scurlock sought out an old college friend called Mark Biggins, whom he trusted. Scurlock requested Biggins to help him rob banks. On June 25, 1992, Scurlock and Biggins robbed their first bank. It didn't go well. The couple intended to steal a car from someone in the bank as their escape vehicle, which they did, but Biggins became so upset that he flooded the engine. They were forced to leave on foot, sprinting across a golf course. After the fiasco, Biggins quit bank robbery, given that he was unwilling to be associated. However, Scurlock enjoyed the process and continued to rob banks on his own. He asked his friend Kevin Myers for assistance and gave him $250,000 for a single task. Myers declined, knowing that it would only ruin his dream of being an artist. Scurlock stole 6 banks in 1992, leaving few or no clues for the FBI, who gave him the moniker Hollywood because of the theatrical makeup he wore during the robberies. Steve Myers began his task as a lookout for Scurlock in 1993. Myers kept a watch on a police scanner, and when any 911 reports regarding the robbery rolled in, he would call up Scurlock from the bank. The pair utilized a variety of techniques to evade authorities, including paying off bank staff to obtain information that would aid them in the robberies. Of course, how could Scurlock forget Biggins? Mark Biggins was convinced by Scurlock to forget the initial bank heist and assist him and Myers in their robberies. Then Biggins ended up being an in-bank watcher, keeping an eye on Scurlock's back. Myers also said that they robbed 2 specific banks 3 times each. Because of Scurlock's expertise in police work, authorities were suspicious that the robberies could be committed by a police officer. By the end of 1995, Scurlock had stolen nearly $1 million. The FBI recognized a pattern and calculated that Scurlock needed approximately $20,000 every month. They were able to figure out this by observing the repeated nature of his robberies, which appeared to be dependent on the amount of money he went missing during every heist. The FBI offered a $50,000 reward for their capture of the unidentified robber, believing at that point that only one individual was involved. His weapon of choice was a Glock 17 Generation 19mm pistol, which he used in all of the hold-up robberies and shot himself with. Death. On their final bank robbery attempt, the trio, encouraged by Scurlock's reward, planned to rob 3 to 4 banks on the same night. According to Steve Myers, they even put up a mobile base station to white out the police frequencies. However, after realizing that the authorities had got every bank in Seattle to include electronic tracers with any stolen money, they scaled back their plans and chose to rob only one bank. On a gloomy Thanksgiving Eve in 1996 at 5:30 p.m., they went to Sea First Bank, where they discovered that $3 to $4 million would be available that day. They escaped in one automobile and then switched to a white van to avoid the cops. They immediately began hurriedly searching through the money for the electronic tracers. At the same time, they ended up being late in Thanksgiving rush hour traffic. At this moment, police claim they noticed a van whose occupants were moving a flashlight back and forth. Police claimed that Steve Myers jumped out of the van with a rifle and began shooting at them, but Myers argued that he never did and that police had fired first. Myers claims he and Biggins were shot in the arms as a result, rendering them immobile. Scurlock, the driver, was the one who jumped out of the van and attempted to fire at the officers, but his firearm jammed. He then got back into the van and disappeared. The van escaped again, but collided with the side of a home. Biggins and Myers were discovered in the van, with more than $1 million lying across the floor, as well as firearms, cosmetics, and clothing covered in the blood of the 2 wounded criminals. Scurlock had escaped the scene by jumping out before fleeing for the last time. Police explored the area completely, but were unsuccessful in locating Scurlock. The next day, Thanksgiving, Wilma Walker and her 2 sons, Robert and Ronald Walker, were preparing for dinner. Ronald once checked their camper in the back of their house and, according to Wilma, hurried back inside shouting, "I saw him! I saw him! He has black wavy hair." They contacted the police and 5 officers arrived. After knocking on the camper door and obtaining no reaction, the police shot 2 full canisters of pepper spray inside, and after continuing to receive no response, they decided that it was empty. Monta, a police officer, started to investigate the camper after hearing a single gunshot. The other officers opened fire. After 4 hours of no response, authorities fired more tear gas into the camper before entering, where they discovered Scurlock dead of a self-inflicted gun wound on his head, which had been the single gunshot that authorities noticed when they initially tried to convince Scurlock to exit the camper. Scurlock's robberies were featured in episodes of Masterminds and the FBI Files. On June 5th, 2024, Netflix published a documentary about Scurlock titled How to Rob a Bank. The film was directed by Stephen Robert Morse and Seth Porges. Scurlock is one of the most prolific bank robbers in US history, having committed 18 robberies and stolen almost $2.3 million, which is equivalent to about $4 million today. Stephen Paul Myers and Mark John Biggins were both sentenced to 21 years in jail. Myers was released in 2013 and now lives in New Iberia, Louisiana, while Biggins was released in 2015 and lives in Olympia, Washington. That is the end of the video. Make sure you comment your thoughts about the video.